So, off you go. You've got it. You go.
Sure.
Tell us all about Epic Games, what you're up to at the moment.
First of all, I mean, Epic Games is a very weird brand to I get be here, so some of you may not be familiar with what we do, and some of you may just be familiar with us because of Fortnite. So I first of all apologize if you've got kids, because that is definitely going to be bothering you. The other side of Epic Games is really we develop an amazing tool set of 3D real-time tools, which you saw in the last presentation, that really are trying to enable this next iteration of what we're here to discuss today. Now, where I sit in the organization is we obviously have our game sector, because that tool is used to build the next generation and next-gen console games. So the tools that we use to build Fortnite, Rocket League, and all these other sort of major hit games is the same tools that are out there building the next generation of games. It's also the same tool that is being used in Hollywood to power the virtual production stages. It's also the same tool being used by BMW and Pagani to power their sales configurators. And then it comes all the way into architecture and real estate where I sit, where we're seeing this need for visual storytelling, this need for curating to consumers a way of connecting and telling that branded story. So that's what I do within Epic, is kind of help foster that community and educate around real-time technologies.
So isn't that exciting? It's still about storytelling. What is still about storytelling? Web3. And as you correctly said, the third iteration of the internet, but is it still above here now? Yeah, let's have a look. Oh, it's gone off. But actually, the subtitle that was on the website says the third interaction of the internet. And I actually really quite like that. So before we go over to you, Jimmy, I'm just going to talk a little bit about where we've come and what all of this is. Well, you know what? We will try and clear some grey area up for hospitality, but we're all in the grey. So first of all, I want you to feel really comfortable about this. We've been on it for a long time, but every afternoon we learn something different. And if we go into that sort of storytelling vocabulary space and take ourselves back BC, before Corona, in fact, 2018-19, and come back into the value of vocabulary, the word that was really being sort of thrown around 2018-19 to confuse us all was blockchain. And in came Corona, and crypto, which of course has been around for a long, long time, became really quite an exciting, interaction for many of us to sort of, during that Corona space, find out what was going on with currencies like crypto, alternative currencies. Fast forward a tiny bit into 2021, and actually the Collins Dictionary named NFT, non-fungible token, the word of the year. But it was also in Q4 of that year that Facebook, social media, a centralized social media, rebranded as Meta. So suddenly this word meta and metaverse came to the fore, and actually, I suppose, took the space during 2022. Into 2023, and I suspect you've all noticed that it's two words, artificial intelligence, that seems to be taking the stage. Now, when it comes to glossary, some colleagues of mine, some associates at Cybersgear, in February 2022, so not that long ago, published a glossary, and we had 22 pages of glossary terms for Web3. Fast forward to a month ago, we've got over 250 pages, and we've just launched a glossary of 150 AI tools. It's moving with the speed of your imagination. Is that right, Jimmy? And what are you doing?
Absolutely. You guys hear me okay? Everyone hear me okay?
Perfect.
Brilliant. Where do I start from?
Well, tell us about what you're doing in this first, Jimmy, and about this speed of light, because we've known each other actually since the 25th of January 2022, when we did an online webinar called Is Your Brand Future Sensing the Metaverse? And we're now part of a community called the Meta Shapers. So tell us about what you've stepped out to do in that time.
Absolutely. Just before I delve into what we're doing, I'd just like to introduce myself.
Yeah.
I'm Jimi Daodu. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Vault Hill. We're based out in Dubai, Nigeria, and London. And personally, I'm married, 2 kids, academically from a computer science background and a business background, and professionally worked with Expedia, worked with Barclays, and a couple of other Fortune 500 companies. Coming back to your question, Vault Hill, what do we do? We're tagged the world's first human-centric metaverse, and what does that mean? We bring brands into the space of the metaverse within 48 hours to 3 weeks, right? We do that hand-holding, a 360 approach from strategy. What is important to you? Why do you want to come into the metaverse? Is it a buzzword for you? How do we take you on that journey? And then we actually help you execute into the metaverse. So alluding from what Tom was talking about earlier with the CGIs and real-time rendering, we do all of that with our developers, and also look at how we work on certain KPIs like brand awareness, brand equity, revenue generation, engagement, and all of this tools from an outcome perspective to make your businesses thrive and also successful. And good thing, Susan, you touched on AI. We started integrating a couple of AI non-player characters, which are like, chatbots or customer care, where you could start to tailor these artificial intelligence avatars to start looking at how you digitize your brand in the sense of, like a receptionist, a concierge, and all of that good stuff, being tailored with predictive analytics. But I'll stop there for now.
No, well, there's just so much. I'm just thinking as you're talking, and there's just so much for us to embrace in all of this. But let's just first of all, I think, look at Web3 for a minute, and sort of think, well, what does this Web3 all mean? Look, very simply, and then perhaps you two can jazz it up a bit. Very simply, this is sort of how I feel. When I first entered into the golf, actually, and into my career in 1980, we were very much in Web 1, although we didn't call it then. So we were able to just get online and view or see something static, and we had to obviously dial up to do it. Web 2 is where we are now, and of course quantum leaps have happened since the early 90s to today, and indeed Web 2 is always going to be with us, so I hope that leaves everyone with a bit of calm. Right, we're always going to be in Web 2, and Web 2 is where we can read, write, and connect. Now, very simply put, in Web 3, we participate. We really, really become active users. Now, how do we do that? There are some other words I'm going to use, and maybe my wingmen can pull them up, take them away, and do something else with them. And words like centralization, which in Web 2 would name all of us, actually. We all work for centralized companies, likely. Maybe you can tell us a little bit different about Vault Hill. But in Web 3, we'll be in a decentralized space, meaning that ownership is for us all. In fact, it's called the ownership economy. And we have decentralized, autonomous organizations. But my goodness, how do we get that to work strategically? What a question. And then, of course, we've got words like inclusivity, because everybody is welcome in the metaverse. And we're very, very much working at this early stage on, well, how can we keep that a safe space? How can we work with identity to ensure that we've all got our own ownership identity? How do we work with content so that content that we create as individuals and as brands is recognized as our content by blockchain, and but how then do we share it and create what we know as the creator economy? And there's a whole host more vocabulary, as I mentioned, in those 255 plus pages. But let's take that now and ask you, if I could, David, can you help clear up this space? Because to me, it still sounds confusing. What is Web3?
Well, I mean, it is a confusing space, though. I mean, this is the thing, is that whenever you're on the cutting edge of technology or you're making these future predictions, you're going to get a lot of different people with a lot of different ideas. Prior to Metaverse, we had digital twins, which if you get 10 people in a room and ask them what digital twin is, you'll get 10 different answers. The way that we look at it is that we have gone through various iterations through time. We went from, using websites to using apps, and now we're entering this new phase where there's this kind of immersion needed, like you were talking about. So it's this idea of a future state that is, real-time 3D. I think the one thing we can all agree on from a future digital frontier, M-word, metaverse sort of approach is that it is immersive 3D. Thank goodness even Facebook agree with that. So, and everything you're talking about, there are absolutely problems that, everyone is trying to solve now. Do we have the technology today to solve all those problems? I don't think so. I think we're seeing little strands of things coming out of it. We're seeing strands of what is important. What is important is IP is important. Personal ownership is important. And having some way to distinguish what is yours over what is someone else is important. And having that interactive layer is also important. So for us, we at Epic, we see this kind of future, let's say 10 to 15 years away, where there is this kind of place where we can live, play, and work together. And we're at the stage now where we're building the foundations. We're understanding this space more. And together, we're all building it. And you guys are going to help build it, because this is a thing that's not going to be built by one company, despite what some organizations might say. This is something that everyone has to chip in. And there's been groups like the Metaverse Standards Forum that are looking at creating guidance around a lot of those things.
Indeed. I'm glad you mentioned again about compliance and regulation and how we all work in this. And I mentioned those 3 words earlier. Digital economic justice. How do we keep, a decentralized ownership economy fair for us all? And of course, we do have blockchain that helps us with our smart contracts. But indeed, really, what is blockchain? It gets some the dark and light, good and bad press, right? So where are we on all of this? It's grey. It is grey. But I'm going to ask Jimmy for his thoughts on the definition of Web3 and the metaverse economy in a minute, but I want to share with you that I was on a panel a few weeks ago, and a gentleman on the panel was asked, John Scott Turco, and he said, Web3 is confusing. So I really just want you all to feel that we're all in this startup conversation together. A lot of us have done heaps of work. Gaming is a front runner of the metaverse, and indeed, so is the industrial metaverse. Been around for a decade and more, doing amazing things. So I think, when we talk about generations, it's our younger generation are much more comfortable than a lot of us with the immersive economy. So another phrase of metaverse economy is put out there as the immersive economy. So, Jimmy, can you help clear up any definitions, but at the same time, take us straight into hospitality and what you feel we should be looking for in our sector?
Absolutely. Just before I delve into that, show of hands, please. How many of us know about NFTs? Okay. How many of us have an NFT? Okay, that number went down. How many of us have a digital wallet? Okay, about the same numbers. Okay, so part of the infrastructure layer and part of the ownership layer within the Web3 space and the blockchain layer has to do with NFTs, which are non-fungible tokens, a means of ownership. So if you take this to real estate, just like when you buy a home or a house or a flat, you have your certificate of ownership, your occupancy, title deed, depending on the region. NFTs are replicating what that looks like. So, rather than having a title deed, you have an NFT that proves your ownership. And, you could track that on a blockchain. You could see all of that transactions and, sale and value, just like you'd go to Property Finder to look at a property and the history of the sale of that property. Now, coming to Web3 and the hospitality, it's now looking at what are those examples of how we can translate this innovative technology into the hospitality sector? Look at rewards, for example. How do we start to centralize rewards from a blockchain perspective, whereby, if I look at a loyalty program, I'm not going to name names now because I'm not being paid by any brand here, but if I take a loyalty program of Hotel X, for example, and I migrate all of that data onto the blockchain, and when a consumer or customer logs into their account, they're able to actually start seeing transactions of when last they came into the hotel, how much points. And then from a hotel perspective, you could start to use that to psychologically remunerate customer behavior, whereby you start to associate percentages of savings on your next booking, for example, and all of that good stuff. But it's around the ownership of the NFT and ownership of that reward loyalty scheme in around the innovation. And then you take it to the next level by creating an experience within the metaverse of that loyalty scheme. So you could start to carry folks along this journey of, okay, now I'm starting to understand the NFT, the Web3, the tokenization, and all of that. But you now need to start looking at it from a customer journey perspective. How do you approach this from an investor perspective? How do you approach this from a user perspective, a brand perspective, and all of that good stuff? And like you said earlier, it is confusing, but we're out here to make sure that we are able to demystify what that looks like, break down each of those scenarios, and ensure people have the right understanding and information to make informative decisions.
Yeah, thank you, Jimmy. I mean, look, it's you're probably going to leave the room and say, look, those guys didn't give us a lot of answers, but here's what we suggest. Get on the train with us now. Get on, you don't have to be at the front of the train putting the coal in and creating the steam, but get on, if you're not already, and stay in the conversation. Because you mentioned community just now, and users, you mentioned, I could hear your train of thought going in and outside the organization to team members as well as our clients. And you mentioned loyalty programs. Now, the first thing about the immersive economy and the metaverse economy, and you see I'm using the word economy again, is to create community. And community is all about common unity for common purpose. And in the metaverse, it's all about common good as well. I mean, it really is that world that maybe as marketeers and storytellers, we really, really, really wanted to create BC, before Corona. Now, AC, we really have the chance with these technology advancements. And so the hospitality industry particularly no longer has to give lip service, and I'm a marketeer in the hospitality industry, to customer relationship management and CRM. And we have a database, but what do we do with it? And we have a loyalty program, but who does it benefit? Now, for example, with an NFT, we can appeal to our desire of enjoying collecting. As a child, we love collecting marbles and little cards, and we like collecting as adults too. So it's quite an omni-generational opportunity that we've got to create community capital through behavioral economics and turn it all around into participants and active participants that really become part of a community. And it's that community building that's really crucial to do at an early stage. How do we do it? Let's ask those that build great communities. What can the hospitality industry do?
I think just look at the opportunities in front of them. Though the metaverse may be a while away and there's still a lot of foundations to be built, if we look at some of the things that have happened very recently, so, Fortnite is our kind of test platform for future technologies. Can you imagine doing something or engaging with an audience of 12 million? We launched a collaboration with Travis Scott during COVID that 12 million users concurrently enjoyed and were involved immersively in this space at any one time. There are hospitality brands that are partnering with our partners at Epic to build these interactive opportunities for brand awareness. There's a demographic which is the future where I think there's a real untapped potential. But as Jimmy was saying, there's also an element where you can add value to existing things that you're doing. If you look at even the traditional website that people use to book hotel rooms, where 3D immersive real-time can add value is showing those people who are coming to your websites the actual room they're staying in, the actual views they're going to see from the room that they're in. Actually giving that level of immersion is where the opportunity right now lies. In the future, as we develop further, that's just going to keep on going. But the advice is to look at what's happening around and the opportunities that are coming up.
Yeah, well,
sorry, 1 second. Let me just add to that.
Oh, please do.
Sorry.
Yeah.
How many people know Wendy's?
Just watch the time for us, won't you? Yeah.
Wendy's. Right, brilliant. So Wendy's don't do frozen beef in their burgers. It's all fresh, right? And they spun up a marketing campaign to sell more burgers, right? And they did it in Fortnite, which David was just talking about, right? And a couple of things I want to highlight here. From a metrics perspective, they were able to stream a concept around marketing in the metaverse for about 2 hours. So they created some avatars and some freezers and gamified the experience, and 1.5 million people watched that for 3 hours. Their engagement on all of their social media increased by an average of 115%. And what was interesting was the cost of production compared to your traditional production of an advertising campaign, where you get a location, an agency, a crew, went down by 40% because they did this in the metaverse, and they 3x'd their KPIs in terms of engagement, in terms of viewers, and reduction in cost. Well, not 3x on cost. But again, it's starting to, time up. But again, it's starting to look at it broadly as to the benefits of the metaverse in the hospitality sector. So just wanted to chime that in there.
Thank you so much. I've got a feeling that the currency of time was reduced for us. I'm absolutely sure. However, what I just wanted to end with, if I may, and maybe you have one last word at the end of this, David, is that we're here to talk about invest in change. And we're here to talk about the future of hospitality. And we're here in Saudi Arabia. So we have two nations in the Gulf that know that there's something in the metaverse economy. And that's the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Dubai Metaverse Strategy, but I'm going to say UAE. So both have given us all, a framework and a vision for 2030 to really get a contribution from what we're calling GMP, gross metaverse product, into the GDP. And in both instances, looking at creating over 40,000 virtual jobs here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and indeed in Dubai for the contribution of metaverse to GDP. Now, how is that going to pan out? Here's the good news. We can do this all together. And so we need to sit down and have those visionary, strategic conversations to see how this works for our brands, bearing in mind that it's also a space for collaboration. So at last, the industry, all the brands that we've had on stage today and will have tomorrow, can be in a place of co-opetition and not competition. And so that our identities actually can move from one verse to another, or indeed that our NFTs can be spent in different schemes than another, so they can be brand friendly. Do you want to just say one thing on that, and then we're off the stage? Thank you so much.
No, I agree. I think this is, as part of our stance at Epic, is that the metaverse in the future is going to be built together. It's not by one person. So we're excited to engage with the hospitality sector to figure out what that looks like from an enterprise level, from a consumer level.
Yeah, from community, and so that there's a real sense of belonging. Because if you imagine that your BlackBerry, some of you were using BlackBerries 7 years ago, where are they today? Who imagined 4 years ago that you'd have 20 plus apps on your phone? We didn't. So imagine, in 24 months, 48 months, 72 months, just what type of world we will be working in. And it's very, very exciting. Thank you for the space. Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.